Hello, welcome back to ABI-DOS. Last episode we worked on Flight Force Simulator and it finally worked out. I don't remember if I did I think I did a couple more. No, I don't remember if I did any more actual optimizations with this. I don't think I did, but yeah. I went on to optimize some other stuff. I don't think any of my machines right now are in challenge mode condition. Yeah, most of them are pretty far away actually. Like most of them are huge. Let's see, assembler? Yeah. Most of them are pretty big, unfortunately. So, oops. But oh well. Alright, next up we're gonna look at Deviation Seeker. So yeah, new puzzle. Let's see how it goes. We are only 3 away from ending, so... Oh, what the heck? But the output is the slash? What? This program identifies if a signal contains a character whose frequency differs from the others. Analyze as if to detect any character appearing more than 50% of the time. If found, transmit it to S5 without color. Otherwise, transmit a colorless hash symbol. There are just 2 scenarios. Either a character dominates by appearing over 50%, or all characters occur with comparable frequency. I see, so you're just looking for something that appears anomalously frequently. A character, regardless of its color variation, will always count as the same character. So you can't use color here to test. Okay. The last value of S0 is always a hash symbol. So a hash symbol detects when the program ends. Really? Here P dominates more than 50% of the time. Here nothing dominates, right? It's not a red hash, it's just colorless hash, right? So here nothing dominates for more than 50% of the time. How would I do this? Here nothing. Here X dominates more than 50% of the time. Huh. I feel like I need a pretty big machine to store things. How would I detect? Like, do I need a counter for all symbols? I'm not allowed to use... Wow, I'm not allowed to use these. I'm not allowed to use... I'm allowed to use X and Y's, but I'm not allowed to use pointer movers and pointer... Alright, so I'm not allowed to move pointers around. I can only read horizontally. I can write though. That might be interesting. I can write. Here it's Q. But color doesn't matter, so Q can appear as any color and it still counts as a Q. Oh my goodness. Okay. I feel like there's some mathematical quirk about this. For a character to dominate over 50% of the time, something must happen to it. Like, it has to do something. But we don't know what that character is, we don't know what any other character is, so we can't just compare their values. We have to compare their occurrences. But then again, we don't know which character in here appears more than 50% of the time. It could be one that appears 50% of the time, but like at the last 50%. So like here, for example, with X, right? The first character is not an X, see? So you can't just use the first character. You could do counts, but you don't have to like... You do have to like potentially detect several different symbols. Like for example, even if there were a successful character that dominates over 50% of the time, right? The remaining characters can all be different. So you like, let's say there are like, how many are there here? 854? 600, 800? 854 symbols. Like, around like 425 of them could all be separate characters. You could have 425 separate characters, plus like another 428, I think, or 29 characters that are all the same. And so how would you be able to detect which character dominates the most here. Is there any other quirk? No. All characters occur with comparable frequency. I feel like I need a count here. I feel like I need to do counting. But it's so hard to do counting if we don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know how many characters, we don't know which character is the dominating one, if there is one. This one is a conceptual puzzle that I don't understand. I do not understand this puzzle conceptually. There was another puzzle that had this exact same idea. I think it was like the signal clamper puzzle. It was exactly the same. I didn't know how to approach it at all. No, it was oscillator, I think. It was oscillator that I didn't know how to approach at all. The mod 4 one. The mod 6 one. Maybe mod here is useful? I wouldn't say it's useful. We have a nullifier, that could be useful. Or a synchronizer, that could be useful. Could we split this up a little better? How about we compare two things at once? Like, we compare how many times... Sorry. We compare how many times this comes up, then how many times this comes up, and then compare how many times this comes up. And whenever a comparison is made... No, I can't just drop the lesser value, right? I can't just do that. I can't just do that. Wait, I actually don't get this one. I don't understand at all what to do here. I believe that maybe it's to deal with the fact that all characters occur within comparable frequency. Like, maybe if I could settle that... The fact that this paragraph occurs, like, the fact that this paragraph is here, tells me that I need to use this information somehow. Either a character dominates or I pay over 50% of the time, or all characters occur with comparable frequency. See, the problem is that if one occurs 49% of the time, for example, and everything else also occurs less than 50% of the time, then you send out a hash symbol, right? So like, you could have 49% of these things be slashes, and still have a hash symbol out. I do not understand at all what to do here. I feel like we have to use information from another puzzle. There was another puzzle that was very similar. I think it was like merger, I think. Yeah, ordering. But this is ordering from the greatest value to the smallest, and doesn't care about count. Like, this simply checks for 166 and then 165. This doesn't do any counting, does it? So when a 166 actually comes out, which is pretty far. Yeah, no, but this just sends all the 166s in, and then when it ends, right, when a 151 is detected, it just resets the system. Is all it does. This merger thing I feel like would be useful in here. Wait, hold on. So, not flat 4. Why did I select flat 4? In merger, once you reach the end, once you reach this hashtag, it just resets, right? It just sends out the first thing again, which is the 159. No, it keeps sending out zeros. Oh, the 151 over here resets it. But isn't there a pointer writer here? There is. So this 151 goes up here and resets everything. Yeah, so there is pointer writer here. There's no pointer writer in here though. That's what's really awkward to me. You can't just send this back to 0. After this, I'm pretty sure it doesn't actually do anything. Like, the output is just a single slash, but how do we know that the output is a single slash? You have to do a lot of counting. But do you have to do counting? I don't think you have to do counting. There has to be some mathematical quirk that makes this work. But how do I find this working quirk? Without going into too large of a scale, how can I ensure that I, in fact, identify more than half? Honestly, you can cut this thing into half. No, I'm pushing the gerrymandering point. No, it doesn't work. I was thinking, if you cut the entire case into half, and slash dominates, or if you cut the case into several parts, and slash dominates in half of them, then you get you get your output. But that's not entirely true. Because for example, you could have like 3 parts, and like all the slash needs to do is it just needs to dominate 2 before that counts, and then you know with a total proportion of 1/3, it will be counted as having more than 50% in, which is actually how gerrymandering works. I really don't like that. I don't want my solution to include gerrymandering because that's wrong. That's not gonna give you the right answer at all. I don't think playing around with this would give me anything useful. There's no extra information, right? 133. I feel like maybe one way of doing this would be to simply count everything. But what to count? Like, I could theoretically check the value against like just 854 divided by 2, and I count a certain value. Issues, I don't know which value to count. And I don't know how to differentiate that. Okay, but the thing is, any symbol that would generate a value more than 854 divided by 2 would fit the criteria. We could just send it in. And once that happens, it's the only thing you can send in, because once it... yeah. So, really, I want to copy 0. I want to copy what comes out of you. But I can't copy you. I can't have 2 outputs. I can't have 2 inputs. It's just, I want to write value 1 onto a checker, I want to write value 1 onto a checker. So, okay, so what about I do this sort of deal where okay, hold on. It does this, does the writing, and it gets sent back. And then this writing will act as the checker. So this will check for 133. And then if 133 shows up, it will simply get siphoned into one of these things. And a hashtag will never show up here, right? I'm not entirely sure. Will a hashtag ever show up here? I'm not entirely sure if there could be a hash showing up here, but I think for the purposes of this, you'll never actually get a hash in the main bulk of the... Yeah, I don't think I'll ever get a hash in the main bulk. Okay, so we can then detect for a hash, which is 155, 151, I mean, which can then activate this obstructor. Actually, this has to first be set to equal 1. Alright, so 1 equal 1 equal 1. And this will basically count the amount that is... Yeah. So this will write here, and then it will basically check... Oh. Okay. Okay. So yeah, like this lets you check how many occurrences of 133 there are. And this goes all the way down to the 151. So like, if we went all the way to the end, wow, that is 445 occurrences of 151. And then when the 446, and then when this comes out, it will release you, and then we can use that to check against about half of whatever this is. Like, half of 154 is, so half of 854 is 427, right? Yeah, just check against the value of 427. It's actually more than 427. Because this is, what is it? More than 50%, right? Yeah, so more than 427. And then if passing... Well, if passing it sort of has to... okay. So if it passes, it will become this value here, which is, I guess you can write it down here. It also needs to be colored white. Otherwise it becomes a otherwise it becomes this 151 here. And then there's a white coloration here. So like, if this happened at the 446, this will, you just keep getting 151s, really. This will release here. This will do this, and then this will become a 133. That's like that. That's technically right, but you won't get that most of the time. Here you get a P as well. Yeah, here you get something wrong because... I don't get why you get this one wrong. 15 is not more than 157. You get... What? Oh, right. This is the exact problem. Because H. This is the first time it fails for real. Well, that's not true. It technically fails of these as well. But for these hashtag cases, you get very, very long iteration times. The issue now is that this value is not the most common value, which is why it fails. You only get 15 instances of this H, whereas the X is the one that's most common. So 15 is counting the H over here, which is why it's wrong. I need to count X. But the problem is that I can't reset the system if you get this. I feel like if I got this failure state, I should reset from the second value onwards. But firstly, I can't reset the system. There's no way to push this pointer back up here. Yeah. Okay, that to be fully honest, that might actually constrain things. If we were to know that we can't shift back up, all the counting has to occur on a single pass. Again, it has to be some working quirk, a quirk that works. But I don't know what quirk works to calculate 50%. Average value? That's not gonna work. What properties would a value possess if it took up more than 50% of the data set? I don't see anything. Like, the average cannot be defined because the rest of the data set, we don't know anything about it. The rest of the data set could be like hundreds of thousands of values away for all we care. And like, you know, you could have like the remaining characters all be in the millions, and then your single most commonly occurring character will be a 1, and then the average of that value will be obviously somewhere in the millions, right? Which is nowhere near what the value you want to select actually is. I don't think it's about the value itself. Is it about comparison? Is it that if I selected pairs, then that's just gerrymandering again, right? If I kept selecting pairs and selecting cases where even then I wouldn't know which value to select. Count with the previous value? If I okay, well, one thing I can say for sure is that by the midpoint of, if there were a value that occurred more than 50% of the time, by the midpoint, you would have seen that character at least once. So at position 427, you would have seen this most common character at least once, is all I can say. That's really interesting. See, okay, I want to find one where like the occurring symbol shows up very, very late. There's a divide symbol. Oh, the divide symbol shows up pretty early. There's an O, shows up pretty early. V, or V just, and the entire grid is, looks like it's just V. This A doesn't show up that late either. Q, Y, Y here. I guess this Y shows up on the 5th symbol, which is a little later than usual. I don't know. I also want to say maybe like you just compare the first two, discard the one that shows up less, but like if you're just comparing two things at a time, how can you do that? Right? Is that something I don't know? Is this just 50% of the time throughout the entire signal? I can't. How? How? Any character appearing more than 50% of the time. Yeah, how? Can I just say I'm completely stumped at this point? Like, completely stumped. I have zero idea as to how this would work. You get a pretty big box. What does challenge look like? Decently small. But not too small. What? So, I don't get it. I straight up do not understand. I keep saying I don't understand, but like it's true, I just don't. What can I do? Can't do anything. Can I? There's like 2 writer variations, yeah, that's really just it. Doesn't help. Nullifier might be the next most interesting thing. I could ignore certain characters. But without a pointer mover, it doesn't matter, right? I have X and Y ports which are not recommended. I don't actually need them in the solution. So really it is just taking out 0 and 5. I don't know. What? I don't know if there's any algorithm to detect more than 50%. Like, could I just look that up right now and see if I can build something similar? The idea is to use a hash map to count the occurrences of each element in the array. Yeah, how do I count the occurrence of each element in this array? What the heck? I don't know what they want me to do. Now before you say hash map, here's one more condition that I think throws a wrench. The value of each key is private. That is exactly what's going on here. The only information you get about it is whether it can be equal to another key, so basically, okay. Alright, hold on. I know there's a lot of silence right now, but I'm just staring really hard. I'm just trying to understand what to do here. I feel like this is just like one of those problems. This is a very simple looking problem. It's a conceptual thing. I either have to discover this myself or just adapt my solution off someone else's already existing answer. I mean, isn't that how code works most of the time anyway? As we sweep, we maintain a pair consisting of the current candidate and a counter. Initially, the current candidate is unknown and the counter is 0. When we move the pointer forward over an element E, if the counter is 0, we set the current candidate to E and we set the counter to 1. So, alright, we set... Let's just go to the case where the first one is not the actually majority vote, I guess. Here. So, set element to H. Counter by 1. If the counter is not 0, we increment or decrement the counter according to whether E is the current candidate. When we are done, the current candidate is the majority element. Oh. Really? I see. Okay, I see what they want me to do. Can I actually perform that algorithm here? So what I'm going to do is, they wanted me to take h, and then they want me to say, alright, this value is h, therefore we set h as our answer and set the counter as 1. 1 of h occurs in here. Next, this value, if not equal to h, will subtract 1 from the total value. If is equal to h, we'll add 1 to the total value. If it subtracts, if your value becomes 0... Wait, no, hold on. If value ever becomes 0, then the next candidate will be just this minus, I think. So, alright, step by step here. H is our element. H counter is 1. Okay. Then minus comes in. Oh, we don't set the element to anything, really, because we don't know there's no majority anymore. Once minus comes in, nothing happens. We get a 0. And so there's actually no majority. So we have no element, and then we have 0. Yes, in fact, when it's 0, you basically get a count that is... You're basically saying that everything occurs equally often. Okay. Then x comes in. X will be the new element and set the counter to 1. V comes in and sets it back to 0. Okay, sure. Then x comes in, sets it to 1. And then x comes in like 3 more times, which sets the value to 4. Now when a new thing comes in, this q, it's not x, so it decreases by 1, but x still remains as the element because x still reigns as majority here. Yes, x remains as majority here because all instances of x have already cancelled out with something in the past. Everything in the past is already cancelled out with something else. So this h and this minus have cancelled out. This x and this v have cancelled out. The remaining x4s have not yet cancelled out, so they are now part of the majority. Q will cancel out with this x, cancelling out as part of the majority. C will also cancel out an x, which brings you down to x2. Then x shows up, bringing you to x3. R and slash and E will show up, which actually brings you back down to 0 with an unknown element. Then x shows up 3 times, which brings you up to x3. Then close bracket x, d, x, they basically just cancel out. So you stay at x3 at this point. And then z, p, and q cancel out again, which gives you x0. Which gives you an unknown element of count 0. This is interesting. In fact, this doesn't mean that... Yes. Oh wait, no, hold on. Yes. If there is no known element, then in reality, at best, you can only just say 50% is occupied by one element. Yes. Yes. If an element does come out at the end, if you get x of any amount, even x1, even if your x counter is at 1, you can say that x is majority. Right? Is that true? Because for x1 to have shown up somewhere, that might not be true. No, it might not be true. Because at this point, let's say at this q over here, x is equal to 0. So we have an unknown amount. We have an unknown element at the count of 0. anything coming out next will increase the count by 1. So if it turns out that the next element is like a z, for example, you get your z count to be equal to 1, and if the program ends here, it will count z to be majority. I couldn't just take the value of z. Wait, no, hold on, I'm thinking about this wrong. I'm thinking about this very wrong. If we take every value except the last out, and we did that algorithm, and it ends out as a question mark 0, could that mean that something still reigns majority there? I think the answer is no, right? Yeah, the answer is no. Alright, so yes, okay, the answer is no. Whatever comes out must be majority at the end of the program. No, wait, it is not majority, but oh, but how do we know it's not majority at the end of the program? Wait, this is only if we know if X is majority or not. It doesn't count anything for real, to be fully honest. Alright, this little trick might not really work. Yeah, okay, so this algorithm will tell you what the majority is if there were a majority. If there isn't a majority here, then we'll have no idea. That thing coming out there. Yes, and I see why. If there were a majority, the last value coming out has to be the majority. Because for it to be a majority, in fact, you would have to have cancelled out everything before it, and yet still have something left. Like, that X, the last X, would be whatever remains after cancelling out all other X's with everything else. And if that were to occur, then yes, X would be a majority here. But this doesn't tell us if there were a majority or not. Which is the problem, right? Yeah, we don't know if there's a majority here. So in some case, like in this case where there's a hashtag, it could entirely just spit out a random element. It could spit out an E for all we know, right? And you know, I don't know. E doesn't have to be a majority if there was a majority. But like, I don't get how or why. I don't know, but could I even build this machine? Like, let's just say I wanted to build this machine. Let's just test this out. Let's assume this is my prototype. Let's just pretend I had this marvelous idea. Not by me, by the way. I can go link a link to the general idea as to where I got this algorithm from in the comments in the description. So yeah, this is where I got my idea for this machine.